Alright guys, welcome to AP Special Needs Masterclass. Remember this is advanced placement, so you'll count yourselves lucky to be here. This one's about if Alex O'Connor, the guy the emoji's looking at, if you couldn't tell, if he is cosmically retarded or if he's a cosmic skeptic or cosmically septic. I don't know which one. We will find out today.
As you can tell, sepsis is bad for you.
It is, actually.
Basically, when I'm brain rotting, this guy shows up sometimes and it upsets me. So
I gotta get off YouTube Reels.
yeah. All right. What is our boy Alex? Alex claims to be an atheist. It's kind of a core character piece of him. It's what he is, what he talks about being, what he loves yapping about, right? What he also is, though, is a mover of goalposts. He, as we'll get into later, constantly changes the framing of his argument, what he's even arguing about, who he is.
Well, what he is.
He, at least according to how he behaves when he's debating people, he seems really certain about what he's claiming, as you can tell by the atheist thing, right? You'd think he'd say he's agnostic or something, maybe. Dramatic foreshadowing.
Just a bit.
And finally, what he certainly is against Christianity. I think that's, of all these things on this beautiful slide that you can see, the thing you can be most certain about is
At
that
least 5 of the things.
he doesn't like Christianity.
I think it's just evident in his arguments that you'll see later.
Yeah, as you see here, we were going to do a face reveal at 500K, but we decided to treat y'all to it early.
If y'all can't find it, I got my laser pointer out for y'all. It's right in this area.
Draw a red circle and point to it.
Okay. Let's see here.
It was kind of small, but
I told him to make it bigger and he wouldn't listen to me.
No, but see, that's pointing. Oh, give me the mouse.
No. I'm the guy. You wouldn't have highlighted the jawline.
No, but you're pointing inside the circle.
All right, moving on. What isn't our boy Alex? He's number one. Yeah, he agnostics a lot.
I'm gonna agnostic everywhere.
Yeah, of course. He is not a non-resistant non-believer. We're gonna say in R in B because that's a mouthful. It makes my mouth feel like gravel, and it's ridiculous. Also, he always claims that he is when he's obviously not, and there's a lot of issues with it. His arguments suck. He's never made a compelling point in his life, I don't think. Maybe that's just me, Maybe I'm resistant to his beliefs. I'm sorry if that's how it is.
Dramatic foreshadowing.
And he's not certain in his arguments. He's just like so inconsistent all of the time, and he changes his arguments a lot as well. But yeah, on to the next slide. Oh, I gotta go back, guys. I'm sorry. There's an important thing here. This is important. Okay.
Listen, we paid good money to an editor for this.
We did.
So you have to listen.
Okay. Click the go button.
Oh yeah.
All right.
I hope that came through. If it didn't, drop a comment and we'll have our editor deported.
Yeah. He's not supposed to be here. Yeah. This is Alex summed up. Sadly, we didn't draw like a really shitty mustache on this guy. Let me get the
work
word
on it.
Yeah.
This is important.
We gotta correctly show him. I think he'd get mad if we didn't. Anytime he's pressed on anything at all, there's too much hair there. Damn it.
It'll do.
Anytime he's pressed on literally anything, he turns into an agnostic, and I think it's just hilarious. If you watch the debate with Cliff, I'm not going to say his last name because it's a mouthful. The Christian guy Cliff that always goes out and is like talking to college kids, who's not a debater. He agnostics all over the place. Moving on.
All right. The focus of this next part is going to be mainly on Alex's video. This is why I don't believe in God. This was his opening statements he made at a debate at some place that is fancy or something. The point being here is that he lays out 3 arguments or issues that he has that are why he doesn't believe in God in particular. And these 3 are divine hiddenness, unequal distribution of belief, and gratuitous suffering, as he puts it, which, as we'll get into, is really just a really shitty version of the logical problem of evil. At least as his version of gratuitous suffering is a really shitty version of the logical problem of evil. Now, when it gets to his whole thing about how he constantly talks about how he's a non-resistant non-believer, and this will be called into question a lot. And as we'll get into later, this is kind of the crux of a lot of problems with him, where he claims to be one thing, is another, and isn't even good at being either of the things that he may or may not be. Featured bottom text over there. Anything else you want to add here before we go on?
I'd just like to say that I feel like none of these arguments are very strong, and for someone saying that this is why I don't believe in God are incredibly weak against just theist arguments, and they're just bad in general. They're very targeted at a specific thing. It's just very revealing.
Yeah, do you think that an atheist would make points about why any God wouldn't exist, or at least like any God that anyone would believe in would exist? But no, he kind of makes more like exactly. He'll spell it out for you. No need to add.
That's really what he means in this whole video, the whole thing. That's about it. I mean, maybe you can include another religion with a good God, but considering all this other stuff, it's really this.
All right, let's get into divine hiddenness. Well, this is a fun one here. So, what this boils down to is a argument from a book that was written by a guy with the last name of Schellenberg back in the 90s, and it has this problem around what is called non-resistant non-belief. So if you hear us say NRNB at any point, that's what we're talking about, non-resistant non-belief. The argument goes as follows. This is a direct quote from Alex in his opening statements. So 1, there is a God. If there is a God, he is perfectly loving. 2, if a perfectly loving God exists, non-resistant non-belief does not occur. 3, non-resistant non-belief does occur. 4, therefore, no perfectly loving God exists. Now, for the AP of the AP special needs out there, you may immediately hear those and none of that sounds like it really follows, and it kind of makes no fucking sense. It's kind of because it does. Yeah. Would you like to address the first point here we have on this?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that you can put the NRNBs into multiple groups. So, I mean, overall, this is just breaking down what he's actually trying to say by NRNB. The first ones are like basically people who don't have the faculties to choose to believe, and
so
I lost my place.
Yeah, no. If you hear non-resistant non-belief, and you might think like, oh, it's just like people who maybe could have believed but didn't, or never heard about it, or whatever circumstance you're imagining. That's like, oh yeah, that's a person that's real. Those people aren't included in this. Any of the people are like, oh, that's a real person that I know or I've heard of or could imagine that exists. Pretty much none of those people are included in this. So, like, one group that would not be considered or should not be considered a non-resistant non-believer, at least to get this argument off the ground, are like children who die before they're like old enough to even have a belief on something, right? Like, you punt a baby out the window of a nursery. That baby can't be categorized as a believer or a non-believer because they're not really like capable of belief, period, right? Yeah. You could also say the same thing about like people who are like profoundly retarded that live a longer life. Anyone who you couldn't even categorize them as believer or non-believer. So none of those people are included in this.
Yeah.
What he's really talking about in particular is a theoretical group of people who have the capacity to believe, who aren't resistant to believing, and have, in Schellenberg's original case, maybe like have had some evidence that God may exist, but found it insufficient, right? And the load-bearing word in all of this is this sufficiency. So there's many disproofs of this argument. A lot of different people have written a lot on this. The one that I think we're going to focus on primarily here is from Dr. Stephen Napier. If you want to go listen to him, you can look him up. There's a channel called Philosophy for the People that had an interview with him where he laid it out pretty well. But it goes something roughly like this, that sufficiency the fact that you would even bring up such a thing as sufficiency implies that there's such a thing as insufficient evidence that's present. And if you came across actual evidence but found it insufficient, well, then you're obviously resistant, right? The example they give is like if you have seizures in your brain, there's some parts of the brain where if you have a seizure, you could have religious experience. So, according to Schellenberg and by Alex's own words, right, they could have a religious experience, a very profound, like palpably real religious experience, and they wouldn't believe it because, like, oh, well, it could have been some other thing, right? And so the way Napier frames it is that if naturalism is the default explanation for what would be proof to you, then you are resistant. Does that follow that?
Yeah.
Does that explain pretty clearly?
Yeah. I was just drawing the two guys for Philosophy of the People. If y'all wanted to make sure you saw them. This is them. This is the main guy. This guy comes on all the time. He's great.
Is there anything else? Is there any other points you wanted to make here before I got to the Maroney or whatever his name is?
Yeah. I'd like to say this Romans 1:20 is here. I'll read it. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, his eternal power and a Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So this is a big part of, the arguing back in the Christian side is that, so for the group of the non-resistant non-believers that, so we started off with, say, what? Am I sniffing?
Yeah, this is an explanation by Slavoj Žižek.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Anyways, I won't sniff anymore. Anyways, in the group of NR, NB, that are people who have never been able to experience, before I read this quote, obviously, the people who are never able to experience any, religious things or anything. So what this quote says is those people have experienced something. And so that group of people would be either split into, well, they've both seen it, but they split into accepting it and not accepting it. And neither of those would be in R and B's. Neither of them.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of piggybacking on that, there's Rooney is his name. There's another argument that falls into basically the category of divine hiddenness is not a problem for Christianity, especially in particular. Rooney presents the argument that essentially because of original sin, everyone is inherently resistant, right? So there's this sin is this desire to be separated from God. Humans got it when Adam and Eve left the garden, and it's been in us ever since, right? And so there's no such thing as a person who isn't resistant to God, period. Regardless of belief, regardless of evidence, that you are default resistant to God. So basically, in Rooney's conception of this argument is that even if divine hiddenness may apply as an argument against other kinds of gods, but to the Christian God in particular, it just doesn't make any sense. Right, so it's a not my problem.
It's saying that everyone's resistant is what the argument is saying, because we have inherent urges to commit sins, which is to distance ourselves from God.
Yeah, and there's also another interesting point to this of the non-resistant non-belief, where it's like, how do you even know whether you are being resistant or not? You could think of when you were a kid and you were, mad at your parents or something, you got upset by something, and later you realized that, oh, I was upset not because of the reason I thought, but because of some other reason that was, the deeper motivation to you. And so one thing can definitely be said that our motivations are not obvious to ourselves. And so to say that you are definitively a non-resistant non-believer, you would have to know your own motivations entirely clearly, and that's just not true of anyone.
Yeah. And further on that is the non-resistant non-believer thing is unverifiable.
Yes.
From any one person's point of view on other people. It's like, I can't tell that you're a non-resistant non-believer because, number one, you could be lying. But number two, it's like, even if you tell me that, how do I know that you know yourself good enough to say that? Just what he was saying.
Exactly.
It's just literally unverifiable.
Yeah, and Alex does not even behave like this. The reason I focus in on Alex talking about him being a non-resistant non-believer is because he says literally in his opening statements of this debate, if you don't believe in a non-resistant non-believer, nice to meet you, it's me, I'm here. There's actually two problems with this. One is that obviously, like we said, he can't really know. By most people's conceptions, everyone by definition is. There's also the issue of time. There's there's nothing in this argument that has a problem with the fact that some people have religious experiences later in life versus earlier in life, and Alex isn't dead, so he can't be a example of NRNB that disproves God, because he still could have a religious experience later in life, right? That doesn't disprove anything. It's just that he hasn't had it yet. It just shows that he hasn't had it yet. Once he's dead, I don't know, we can hash that out.
The main point of the argument is that there is no non-resistant non-believer that exists. It's like it only happens at the moment of death,
right?
If it was a thing,
right? Exactly.
Even if it was a thing, it would happen at the time of death, like the baby, right? Like it wasn't a non-resistant non-believer like per se until it was killed or something, because it could have changed throughout its life. It's a snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. So the types of NRNB that aren't verifiable are the only ones that could verify this argument, and so it's weak as shit. It's not great. It's not his weakest though, which leads us into the next one. Beautiful animation.
Thank you. I actually did everything for all of these, so all the animations are me. So make sure you comment that guy. Good job, good job. Don't actually comment, I don't want to hear it. So unequal distribution of belief. So we're going to start off with a quote from him. He says, "Your place of birth, which is entirely arbitrary, is a reliable indicator of how likely you are for Christianity to be saved." Now, first of all, I'm going to talk about that saved part. To everyone out there, how does Alex know who gets saved or not? I don't know if this is Alex claiming to be God or not. I don't know what he's claiming here. But this is really just a misinterpretation, like a horrible misinterpretation of the statistics he's pointing at. Like he always talks about like Thailand versus, I think it's something like America or something. It's someone else, but he always uses Thailand as the people who believe less, and the other one is the people who believe more. And he's saying because they believe less, we know that they don't get saved, or whatever. We know these people do get saved, and it's just not true that we know who gets saved, first of all. And once again, back to Romans 1:20, we can know that people may not look like Christians on the outside, but because they haven't had access to like going to church, stuff that would be a traditionally Christian relationship, but they still have the ability to be saved, right? And so the statistic doesn't even apply there. Another quote for the other side is the quote that's talking about people who were Christians but who aren't allowed into the gates of heaven, which is, "Lord, Lord, do we not prophesy in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and do many mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I have never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." Now, we have people on both sides who do the opposite of what the statistic says, and you don't even know what happens either. So it's like, this is just totally misinterpreted, totally twisted. It's ass.
Yeah, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what Alex is capable of knowing, as well as what is actually the case in the world, right? Especially, I feel like the Matthew one is like especially strong here, because it explicitly talks about people who proclaim belief but aren't saved, right? And so he's concluding from belief salvation, a thing which he doesn't really know about. Most good Christians, if you talk to them, you say like, "Oh, well, am I going to get saved?" Most good Christians will say something along the lines of, "Well, I can't really know that. It might not look good for you. It looks pretty good for you, but I have no way of knowing that. That's God's business," right? And if it sounds like we're focusing on Christianity, it's because Alex focuses on Christianity. All of this is revolving around him rejecting Christianity in particular. We'll get into that more later. But I want to get a little bit further into this one. There's actually entirely circular logic within Alex's argument here. One of the examples he loves to use is Thailand, right? It's like Thailand, there's a bunch of atheists. In like Italy or the Vatican City, there's, all Christians are all theists, and so there's this unequal distribution. And he only uses it on this like really broad scale, I think, because that best demonstrates his point without obscuring what the point is actually doing. Because we can shrink that down, right? We can say like, well, one city is more theist than another city. One neighborhood's more theist than another neighborhood. And eventually you get down to like, one person is theist and another person is not, and therefore there's this unequal distribution of belief, and so God must not be real, right? So that's the same thing as Alex saying, well, I'm atheist and you're not, so I must be right, which makes no sense.
Yeah. You're just saying God doesn't love me, so because I'm atheist, so God not real.
Right, and that's why we kind of say it's the same thing as divine hiddenness. Because it's like him saying, well, I don't believe in God and you do. It's kind of the same thing as him saying, like, well, I haven't had an experience of God that would make me believe and you have, or something, right? Was there anything else we had here?
We were going to talk about East Germany and when they put the Berlin Wall.
Oh, yeah. So another thing about this unequal distribution is that there's an implication that the unequal distribution is a result of God's action, right? Because he kind of makes this point. It's like, well, are people in Thailand less deserving of God's love,
or forgot about free will? Did
he make them worse than people in other countries? Totally ignoring the fact that the distribution of belief is the consequence of the actions of free agents in the world. So he loves talking about Thailand. Doesn't talk a lot about Germany. If you look at the statistics on Germany, East Germany is overwhelmingly atheist and West Germany is overwhelmingly Christian, right? That isn't because there was like some sort of primordial difference of distribution. That's literally only because the Soviet Union occupied East Germany and feet tapping on table.
Yeah, bro's like tapping on the table. He's giving ASMR. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, East Germany is entirely atheistic, not because of some sort of primordial uneven distribution of God's love. It's literally because the Soviet Union was a communist nation that had enforced atheism, and so everyone there were raised atheist and are atheist now. It has nothing to do with this unequal distribution of God's love or hatred of people. It's just because of people with free will making choices and those choices having consequences. And this also is true of that his argument on the individual level, right? Alex is atheist and I'm not, because he grew up in a different place with different people that had different actions around him that led him down a different way, that led him to different conclusions. Anything else you want to add there?
I think I'm good. We can go to the next one. I mean, like we said, this is probably his worst argument. So it's probably get the shortest amount of time.
Animate that fish.
This slide is goated, dude. This slide is absolutely goated. By the way, Alex is literally the jonkler. I'm sorry. We'll prove why. This is logically
he's
sound.
He's unironically the jonkler in this photo.
This is logically sound.
This is a photo of Alex on his way to a Richard Dawkins talk.
He was stroking it in the bathroom on the way to the Richard Dawkins talk.
This will make sense in a moment. Do you want to open this one with me?
Did he gnostic in the bathroom walls?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't do this shit. You can open. You can open.
Okay, if you're wondering why there's a bird shitting on the Joker's head, and this says "bird shit on my head equals skydad fake," it's because it's almost exactly what Alex said. This is hardly a hyperbole of what he said. So, Alex's version of the argument, the logical problem of evil, is that there's two categories of evil, or like of suffering in the world. There's like grand suffering and like minute suffering. Alex argues that basically big suffering cause big lesson to be learned, but small suffering cause no lesson to be learned. Obviously, right? And before I even get into that, the three examples he gives are: 1, stubbing your toe; 2, getting caught in the rain without an umbrella; and 3, a bird shitting on your coat. So yeah, as you can see, he is the jonkler here. So what you might say, once again, if you're among our top of the class AP special needs, like, oh well, if big bad give big lesson, then small bad could give small lesson, right? And that's pretty obviously true in his examples, right? In 2 of the cases being just bring an umbrella, kind of cover the bird shit and the rain, and 1.
Both of them umbrella. Absolutely hilarious.
Alex has umbrella problems.
He doesn't know what an umbrella is.
So there's just a very obvious point of conclusion that you can make, like, oh yeah, if you get caught out in the rain, you're like, oh, maybe I should get an umbrella. Maybe I should check the weather in the morning. If I could do these things and organize my life a bit differently, I would live a better life. And now I can learn that. But no, there's nothing to learn from getting stuck in the rain besides that God's not real, evidently.
That's it. I'd also like to say the fact that, Alex is what's called like a moral motivism or something like that. Motivism. Yeah. So he always says like, boo this, boo that. You know, that's like all morality is. I think it's just hilarious that he combined, like, when you combine that with saying the Holocaust teaches great lessons. You're like, so just boo the Holocaust, but it teaches you like really good things. Like, I don't know. Also, I don't know how much the Holocaust really like taught us. Like, I think we already knew that was a bad thing. You know, It's like yes, you could say it taught us some things. I don't know, but like,
and it taught one guy a lesson about like invading Russia in the winter.
Yeah,
but you know,
he wasn't the right man to be taught. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the great good.
I definitely don't think Alex was talking about that as the great good here.
No, seriously, I feel like you should have to like say what the great good was if you're just gonna claim they do because like I don't really believe that like
definitely
there's no like I don't believe in this like good things come from bad things, so good things are justified like for God's existence or bad things are justified because good things happen from them. Like you need like evils to get greater goods. I don't think that's like a thing. I think that's stupid.
Yeah, I think there can be goods that come from bads, but the goods don't justify the bads.
Yeah. I really think this is the whole argument is just like a trap for you to be like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, you think this. I feel like that's the whole thing.
You see, his plan here was to make a really stupid point, and then you have to agree with his premise to dunk on his stupid point, but then you agree with his premise and you're an idiot too.
Yeah.
You know, it just drags the, average IQ down in the room. Anyway, his second point on this is about animal suffering. I'm assuming he's like a vegan or something.
He was, and then he quit being a vegan, I think.
Oh, no shit?
Yeah.
I wonder what... I guess they don't suffer anymore. I'm sorry, fish.
They don't.
Anyways.
He stopped spinning. He stopped suffering.
Yeah. Antelope got eaten on planet Earth. I'm sad now, right? So...
Baby.
According to his... Yeah, antelope baby.
You gotta be a baby.
It wasn't bad enough.
No, it's gotta be baby.
His whole thing with this is, right, he has this premise that, there's lessons that come from bad things, and therefore they're justified. And then he makes like, okay, well, animals suffer, and they don't learn lessons, so it's just bad, right?
This might be the worst, connection of the argument, as well as the worst argument for, suffering. I mean, we talked about how this was just, a really shit version of the problem of evil, the logical problem of evil. And this is just, the worst way to get to the animal suffering thing. I think this might be literally the worst possible way to arrive at it.
Yeah. Now,
calling back to animal suffering. Boo.
Calling back to our last one, I have a question for members of the audience here, and that's, have you ever stepped on your dog's tail and he whines and looks really sad at you, and the next time you walk by, he scuttles away, very obviously worried that you're gonna step on his tail?
Would you like me to answer for the crowd? Would you like me to answer for them?
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah. You could describe that as a dog learning a lesson from a bad, right? So if animals have enough consciousness to experience suffering, then they have enough consciousness to generate some sort of lesson from that in their whatever level of consciousness they have, thus justifying it. And if they don't have consciousness, then they're not suffering, right? So it's either they do suffer and they must, and therefore they obviously get lessons from it, or they don't have consciousness and there's no suffering in the first place. It makes no sense.
Also, I mean, even better example would just be everyone's seen a dog that's been beat before, and you can tell when you raise your hand at them,
yes,
or walk at them or stand up around them. They get scared or they piss or something. It's just very obvious, and they've learned that reaction, or that reaction's been ingrained in them. Whatever it is, they've learned that.
Yeah. Last thing I have for this is, if this sounds like we're dunking on really shitty arguments and it's kind of unfair, one, blame that on Alex. These are his arguments. And two, yeah, we're doing that because he sucks at making arguments. These are really bad. They really don't make any sense. And if this is what convinced him, I don't understand how he hasn't been unconvinced at this point. Like he said, I'd like to repeat that this is why he's an atheist. This was in his Why He's an Atheist video. Not only are all these arguments kind of pointing at Christianity only, but the main point is they're horrible if you're just arguing against a theist. Does the God have to be good in a theist argument? No. I mean, that's a simple one that destroys all of these. Yeah,
like a snap. It literally, the God could be not even bad. It could just be like a mediocre God.
No.
Like a morally... I'm not going to say agnostic. No.
I was going to say, maybe this is why I don't worship a God that might exist because I think he's bad. Wasn't the title?
Yeah.
I mean, that should have probably been it, but I don't know, maybe that didn't like get as many views.
Yeah.
Maybe Sam Harris didn't like it.
Maybe. This is going to get 5 billion, by the way.
Yeah. We'll go over why it gets that many. All right. What now, Mr. NRNB?
Or not.
You want to open this one up?
No, you got it.
Okay. Scroll down my notes so I can, Thanks, Jamie. Jamie, pull that up.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the old Alex O'Connor twerking videos right now.
Please. Ask Grok to generate an image of Alex O'Connor getting oiled up.
Okay.
All right. While we wait for that to load, I'll continue the video, I guess. So, the point we're going to make here before we go further is if Alex really is this, genuine seeker of truth, right? He's, gone and he's searched for the answers, and these are his problems with God existing. You would expect him to look for solutions to this, right? You'd expect him to be like, okay, well, what's the best counter argument to that? What could unconvince me of that? Because, he said himself, I would love to believe in a God. Secondly, if these are his problems, you would expect him to focus on those problems whenever he talks to people about his atheism, right? So, as in the video we're going to cover in a minute, you'll find that he doesn't really cover these issues very often. And the thing he talks much more about is like everything except what he claims are his real problems with it, right? Which leads us into the third point here. If these three things are his fundamental problems with believing in God, you would expect him to really adamantly defend these points as an atheist whenever he's pressed on them, right? So now we have a great question of, will he? Well, there's plenty of times that he's debated atheism. He's debated against Christians. He's debated against general theists, I think, at some point. He's glazed plenty of atheists, so let's see what he does. Thank you for drawing the Subway Surfers. I was worried I was losing the retention.
Okay, yeah, I was just making sure.
I was wondering what you're doing at first, and then I got distracted because I was watching the Subway Surfers gameplay.
Oh, I mean, that should lock you in. I mean, it's good for the brain.
It is.
I feel like you could tell this was the cop personally, but
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, this goes back to the thing we were talking about where he literally just like instantly agnostics in his pants as soon as he's pressed on anything. You see this in the clip debate like immediately. Something good to highlight here is that if you choose to be agnostic, you will always be wrong. There either is a God or there isn't a God. There is no I don't know. So, I mean, by definition, Alex, you're just wrong every time you say it agnostic. So, maybe just stop saying that. I remember this in the debate. I mean, as soon as Cliff asked him, like, why he thinks people have value, like, why is he motivated to do things, he was just like, I'm agnostic. Oh, I'm agnosticing everywhere. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And, I mean, the claim of being an atheist is that you're saying there is no God. That's what you're saying, right? And then someone who says they're an atheist and then goes to being agnostic is just, you're not an atheist.
Right, this isn't two states that you can switch between.
Yes, they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Because it's just how it is.
That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is.
That was one thing I wanted to bring up was there's a video from an interview that Ricky Gervais gave where he was talking to this guy. Ricky Gervais is an atheist, in case you didn't know. And the guy basically asked him, like, okay, so there's three doors, right? There's God exists, God doesn't exist, I don't know. And immediately Gervais is like, hey, what's the third door doing here? That door has nothing to do with the other two, right? It's like God existing or not existing has nothing to do with my knowledge of it. Those are unrelated issues, right? And so if you're an atheist, right, you're arguing about which of the first two doors are right. The third door doesn't matter, right? So Gervais identifies the category error that Alex constantly makes, which is that he can somehow like retreat into agnosticism whenever he's pressed on his atheism. Yeah. Because atheism is you're making points, you're making critiques of things, whereas agnosticism is a skepticism of both sides. It's like, I really don't know, I have no idea what's going on with this. Neither side really convinces me. Neither side, I can't necessarily poke holes in either side that well. I'm really unsure, right? But being unsure has nothing to do, especially that has nothing to do with you, if you're making explicit arguments as to why you're sure God's not real.
Yeah. I'd also say I think he does this whole agnostic thing because, number one, his arguments are shit. And the only argument that's, like, I guess okay is the non-resistant non-believer one in here. And he has to be one of them to, like, prove to himself that it's a good argument.
Right.
Which he knows he isn't, in my opinion. That's what I think. He knows he isn't. But he thinks it shows that he is one when he says, I'm agnostic.
Yes, exactly.
That's what he thinks it does. Because that's the only argument I guess he thinks he can do something with. I'm really not sure because they're all honestly shit. But whatever, man. Oh, no. I got it again. Okay, pause. Pause, guys. I'm sorry. Let me get my editing
Pretend like you didn't
back.
see that.
Okay, let me go back. Okay.
We rehired our editor.
Yeah, I think we're definitely deporting him.
Yeah.
Press the button.
All right. And that is why we need H-1Bs. Anyway.
Yeah. We need 1 million Indians in here right now, actually. They could help us edit this. What is the cutoff point, you think? How many could actually fix this?
I don't know. I think one. I think one would be enough.
I don't.
I'm being real with you.
I disagree with you.
All right. Why don't you start yapping while I draw some doodles?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to point out the significance of this image. You see Adam's a small portion of his testicle hanging out in this image. I think that's important. Also, his finger reaching out. This is an art class. This is AP Special Needs Master Class, so you get a little bit of everything in here. So, big part of this image is, number one, testicle. Number two, Adam is not fully extending his finger here. Moving on. So, shake Obama. Oh, there he is.
All right, you want to start going
okay,
over his
yeah,
debate
I
with
can
the Kletchky?
Oh,
Or
bro said the mouthful.
Nechtly?
It's Kletchky, dude. I don't know why it said that way. I looked up the name. This is the best I got.
Did you listen to one of the little short videos on YouTube where it's like how to say word?
Yeah.
It's like some guy being like, Kletchky. Kletchky.
Yeah, I actually listened to the whole video too. So, first of all, in this video, to explain why Sheikh Obama here and Sheikh Alex is here, these are unedited, by the way. I took these in Saudi Arabia. Alex makes the claim that Jesus never claimed to be God, which is like the most basic thing to defend. And every Muslim has this argument, and it's just like, it's ass. You see all the quotes we have up there. We'll read them in a bit. Something else during the debate was that Alex said that he doesn't know what would prove to him that God exists. You don't even know. What that tells me is the bar is so high that you can't even think of something that would do it.
It's
if
incalculably high.
If God came to you in person, you would say, I think I slipped and some LSD slipped up my ass and I tripped balls. Or you just wouldn't tell anyone about it.
You'd be like
you'd literally just keep it silent, probably.
You'd be like Ebenezer Scrooge, where he's like, "There's more of gravy than of grave about you."
Yeah, it was like it's just a bit of whatever in my whatever.
A bit of mustard.
Yeah. And I think that's just ridiculous. Like the whole NRNB thing and Alex is it's just horrible, and it seems like he's lying the whole time. Another thing, yes, it's a Christian argument, right? He's arguing the debate question. First of all, which I have a problem with a little bit. The only reason is because this whole debate is structured so that Alex and Paul, the kid diddler, it's proven, guys. I'm just kidding. I don't know. He just looks like one of them.
It's all in the phrenology.
Yeah.
You put calipers on that guy's head, you would conclude that his hard drive needs to be checked.
100%. But the debate question is, does the biblical God exist, right? And so, if you think about this, you know how this is set up? Is you got the Christians sitting down there, downrange, and the atheists just pull out their guns and start shooting. There's no shooting back, right? That's it. He's not interested in a debate, per se. He's interested in jabbing at this.
Right. This has no bearing on what Alex believes.
Yeah.
Or his arguments, right? His so great, so perfectly presented arguments for why he doesn't believe in God. Debating whether or not the biblical God exists has no bearing on this, right? Just like, part of me, like me being a Christian, is me believing that gods exist, right? And if I was arguing with like a Hindu person about whether or not God existed, the argument would cease to make sense because it didn't really matter to me. It's like this argument about whether or not your God could be real or could not be real really has no bearing on my beliefs because I believe my thing is real and I have reasons for believing that. What I want to get into, particularly, irritates me quite a bit, is Alex brings up this point about his argument about Jesus not claiming to be God. Obviously, Jesus affirms this in John. He says, "I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one." And what was the other one?
All authority has been given. No, in John?
Yes, in John.
Oh, in John, okay. I have to look for the quote.
All right, while he looks for that, the point is that there are clear statements from Jesus of him being God in John. So what does Alex do, right? And what do anyone who debates this point argue? They're like, oh, well, John's not real. It's fake. It was written later. It's all made up, right? First of all, why would you make that about one book of the Bible, not all of them, right? Like, I'm sure there's things in Matthew, Mark, and Luke that he also has problems with, like a person walking on water and being raised from the dead and like feeding 5,000 people, right? So like he could why make this point in particular about John? Yeah. Like this point's like, oh well, it's especially not true, but you don't believe anything any of them say.
Yeah, his whole point is that it was written later, and it seems like Jesus became more divine in that one or whatever. And it's just like, was he not divine enough?
Yeah.
The other ones,
Did you find the other one?
No, I didn't find it.
Okay. The point is that John has like very clear points that like even like a smooth brain could be like, oh yeah, he's obviously saying he's God. So let's just take him at his words. Like, okay, John's fake. Okay, cool.
I think we didn't include them over here is because the ones in Matthew and Mark are like just as good.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say we throw out John, right? Okay, John's not counting, right? Okay. Can you read the quote from Matthew 28:18?
Yeah. All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Like, bro, how can you read that and not think that like Jesus is God? I just is there any
one more wrinkle from smooth and you're like, oh, that guy's saying he's God.
Yeah.
Like if I walk up to someone and say all authority in heaven and earth is mine, what person wouldn't think that I'm saying that I'm God, right? And it's a problem for Alex, because the book of Matthew is part of what are called the Synoptic Gospels, and we have much older records of them, and they corroborate each other, which is why we have these two quotes from Matthew and Mark. And this is the story where Jesus forgives sins, right? It's understood in Judaism that only God could forgive sins. Jesus literally says, I've forgiven your sins. And then the Pharisees show up and say, hey, that's blasphemy. Which would mean that he's claiming he's God. So
yeah, that's another common one is that, I mean, they claimed he was doing blasphemy. Like, I don't know.
Like, they were pretty pissed at him for a particular reason here.
I wonder why. If y'all are wondering, Matthew 28:9-10, Jesus is basically being worshipped by the disciples, and Jesus is okay with it because guess what? He's God.
Yeah, but none of this matters, right? This doesn't matter to Alex, right? Because he denies the premise already. He's arguing over conclusions from a premise he doesn't even agree with. So why are we doing this? We're doing this because Alex likes to engage in arguments that he could never lose. Right? He can't lose an argument where he's like, okay, well, I'll pretend to agree with you and then disagree later. That's not an argument he can ever lose, because he can always revert back to, well, I never agreed with the premise anyway, so what now, liberal?
That joke was master crafted in a dwarven forge, 100%. And we have a point here that Alex is anti-Christian. And look, I understand that point was made in a debate, but the fact that first of all, you made that argument, right? And you also claim, you might have been, you might not have been, have gone to like Sunday school and like gone to church. Were you not like what? Like, you didn't listen, dude. And you also like went to college for theology. That wasn't worth it, dog. I don't know what you did. I don't know if they told you. They probably just made you atheist. Is probably all they did. And they're really bad at making you atheist, actually. Like how bad were they? Well, honestly, how dumb were you to listen to probably even worse arguments than you're saying, because I'm guessing you you got better, you got smarter, you master crafted some of new arguments that you got that are also shit. But there was some worse argument that convinced you probably back in college, and you couldn't defend what how how did this even happen?
One thing I want to note on this, kind of a sidebar, is that a really common thing for atheists is that they go to Sunday school, right? And who's your Sunday school teacher? It's some random guy who loves Jesus that volunteers his time on the weekends.
Or it's an old lady.
Right. It's this person's not a learned scholar in the text, right? And that's the person who gives you most of your information about the religion that you subscribe to as a child, right? And then you get older, and then a PhD college professor makes an argument, and you're like, wow, that guy sounds a lot smarter than the old lady that told me about Noah and the ark.
Yeah.
Obviously. But then they never go and look at, okay, well, what do the PhD scholars that are actually Christian, that are theists, that have real arguments, or what do they say about it? They never actually get to that, and that's why these arguments have no backing. Yeah. That's why they're not rigorous in any meaningful way, and why they're so easy to shoot down like this, because basically he's hopping from okay, well, when you're a kid, it's any adult's the smartest person you ever met.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he became a young man, it was oh, well, this old guy here that's at the school sounds a lot smarter than that other person, so I'll just believe whatever he believes. It's just so many of them follow the same path, and there's never a reflective moment maybe the old lady at my Sunday school just didn't know as much as the professor at my school at Oxford that is teaching me philosophy.
Yeah.
Maybe he just knows a bit more. And maybe there's someone who knows more than him out there, or knows at least as much as him, that disagrees with him.
Something funny. Now, obviously this is conjecture that he became atheist at college.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a 90% success rate when it comes to predicting this. It's actually probably 100. So, the statistics don't lie. As long as you don't misinterpret them horribly like you did earlier. But it seems like a lot of authority trusting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe you should trust the one and almighty authority and
right.
Believe in God. I don't know. But it just seems a lot of authority trusting for a cosmic skeptic. I don't know. I'm more cosmically retarded. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I had to say the line.
His case isn't looking good here.
No. I had to say the line.
We got anything else for this one?
No, we're good on this one.
All right. Sorry, guys. That was since our editor got deported, I had to improv that one.
H-1Bs aren't getting through right now. I'm sorry.
Anyway, feet Slavoj Žižek sniff. What you see
was
here?
That me again?
No, that was me.
Oh, okay.
Is you might describe an everything casserole. Here we have your auntie's famous green bean Cheerio everything casserole.
Sorry, guys. This guy put the image in tiny.
Yeah, please circle it for the viewers. I want you to know that. Get working on that Subway Surfer underneath the lines. So, if you're wondering what we're talking about here, I list a couple things that that Alex believes in, that he claims he subscribes to. Most of this is from his Q&A. I think it was 850K Q&A. So he does not believe in free will. He is unsure of what consciousness is. He is a emotivist when it comes to morality, which basically is the thing we're talking about. Morality is just boo this and yippee that.
Just boo Holocaust.
And he's also not convinced of materialism. He describes himself as he's not a materialist. The point I want to make here is that there's a lot of internal issues with this group of beliefs. The easiest one to point out here is the issue of not believing in free will, and also admitting that you have no fucking clue what consciousness is or does, right? It's pretty easy to see the problem here, right? Free will, as everyone experiences it, is rooted in you being awake and conscious and being able to choose things. I don't have any fucking clue what consciousness is, except that the one thing that everyone knows it doesn't do that, right? So you might ask yourself, why did this group of...
I'm putting it on a skateboard this time. Come on. It's good.
This group of beliefs is not together because he's put them together. It's because he's been told things from people that he thinks are smarter than him, most notably Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins.
Dawkins heavy.
Yeah. And never questions them. He just was okay, well, that guy says this is right, that guy says this is right, and I think they're both really smart.
You love
and
your authority, huh?
They own the libs or whatever, and so they must all be right at the same time, and so I'm going to believe everything they both believe. That's not how you construct a sound view of the world, right? You would think he would question all of these things. He'd be cosmically skeptical of these guys constantly. No, he just glazes them. He glazes them in and out and in and back and forth and up and down and all around.
Baby oil.
There was a lot of baby oil in the Sam Harris one.
I saw the video.
Dude, if y'all haven't listened to him interviewing Sam Harris, there's like one stretch of the conversation where Harris is laying out this like batshit retarded definition of like what morality is, and Alex, cosmic skeptic, is just like, oh, but like wouldn't that? Well, like what about this? And he's very clearly trying to get a clarification from Sam because he doesn't agree with what Sam says, and then Sam just doubles down, and he's like, okay, yeah. Very obviously have no fucking clue how that makes sense, right? Because Harris is like, oh yeah, well you're just like, what maximizes pleasure is good, essentially, which is not what Alex believes. But he just like treats it like, oh yeah, that's, that makes total sense, even though he knows it doesn't make any sense to him. Would he ever treat any theist argument that way? He puts the kid gloves on anytime he's talking to anyone who agrees with the basic premise that like Jesus doesn't love you and God's not real. If you agree with that, he'll glaze everything you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'll love you. A funny thing that I was thinking about is that a lot of his arguments are like these puzzle pieces specifically. He just like tries to put all these things that don't fit at all together, and then he thinks that going to being a skeptic, a agnostic, puts these things all like this, and he's like, oh, I'm protected now. Now he's in his little shield. He's in his little bubble because he's actually saying, look, when I hear him say he's agnostic, all I hear is I'm retarded and I don't know what I'm talking about. That's really what he's saying, and he thinks he's retreating to a strong point.
Retreating to a strong point. He uses red line.
He uses not that blue line.
No, shit that you don't even know about.
Is it the other way around?
I don't know. Whichever one was in the Soldier of Fortune magazine is what.
That's the stuff they're using right now, man.
Yeah,
they're using it right now. Active duty, right now. What it was 30 below zero or something? What is it? Below freezing?
Below ice.
Below ice. It's below ice. Anyways, yeah, he thinks that going to being agnostic is like he's protected from any attack, and he just does this all the time. But he's just saying he's retarded, and that's all that's going on. And it really pisses me off because no one ever says that. No one's like, yeah, you are retarded. That's why you got to do this. Anyways, another point I want to make is that it's just hilarious to me that like he said he's not anti-Christian before, but almost all his videos are like at Christianity or revolving around it, and a lot of his arguments are revolving around it. Like I said earlier, if he went up against just like a theist, he would get like battered woman tier. Like it's like bad. Like he'd be scared for the rest of his life. He'd probably just say like he's something because he like wants to avoid it even more. Like he'd have to switch from agnosticism to like some other thing.
What do you mean by agnostic?
Yeah.
It's not obvious.
He'd have to find something else to be that's like even more retarded because he'd be so scared. And another thing is that, I mean, if we're just going by like religion numbers, like Christianity is the most, and then it's what? Islam, and then it's
I think it's Hinduism.
He refuses to go against Islam because he's like, a little scary babe. Scaredy, I can't get the word out.
Scaredy pants?
Yes, yeah. Whatever. Scaredy pants. And, like, okay, sure, maybe you don't want to get bombed or something, but that seems like, I don't know, kind of lame.
I kind of doubt it because he doesn't talk about Hinduism anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like if he's the only thing he won't touch is Islam because, inshallah, the brothers will rise up and take him, right? He doesn't say shit about anything except Christianity. Yeah. Christianity is the exception, not the rule. By the way, to all of our Hindu viewers out there, we know there's so many of you. Statistically, you must be the majority.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go just like slam dunk on somebody, challenge him to a debate and only bring up Hinduist points. Because I know his ass has not read anything.
Yeah, I don't think they're... This may be from ignorance, but I don't know, like, a Hindu debater that's, like, debating the Hindu gods, right? Like, proving that they're real, logically. If you are out there, please go on Alex O'Connor's show. That would be amazing. I'll be cheering for you. Jesus will be cheering for you. I'm telling you that right now. That would be
I think I can say I'm almost certain that Jesus' position would be that Alex going from atheist to Hindu would be a net positive.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Go Buck Wild, guys.
Maybe there's a chance if he goes. Maybe there's a
the
chance.
market is there, okay? The viewership is
Capitalize.
there. The weakness exists. Exploit it.
It would be beautiful.
Exploit Alex's weakness.
Hey, yo. You good? Any more slander you want to slip in here? Is slander a legally actionable term?
I mean, it's a multimedia, so I guess it's libel and slander.
Okay.
It was libel.
This video is legally actionable. He's
I'll
British,
say,
dude. What's he gonna do?
All I'd say is,
Stab me?
if
We have guns here.
If you've seen his jawline, it's
Oh yeah.
it's
Here,
bad.
you draw it. Draw it.
Oh yeah, I'll draw it. So here, just say more things.
Oh, if anyone knows where he lives, please comment it in the comments.
See, this is actually getting legally actionable now.
Oh, you draw it so much better than me. Holy moly. Yeah. Look up. Oh, we should have said this earlier in the video. Okay. What we should have said at the beginning is go look up his side profile. It looks exactly like this. And that's enough logical proof, metaphysical proof even, depending on how it feels, that he's retarded. And he actually, I recommend that he takes this class. It might help him in his endeavors. He may find Jesus. He may make his arguments better so we can come in here and, special needs, deconstruct them, That may be the move.
It could help him, but I don't know if he believes he could do it of his own free will. So
yeah,
he can't watch it. He can just witness it, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
He's been forced.
We're really rambling at this point.
He's cosmically forcing himself to unwill everywhere.
Is there anything else? Any other points we need to make here?
Oh yeah, in the debate with Cliff, his label was atheist. Okay, during the debate, he says he's agnostic. Like they don't change his label or anything. He's still labeled as atheist, and he says he's agnostic. Like you've lost. You lost it. Okay. But yeah, that's probably my last thing.
Okay.
Unless you got anything. Yeah.
All I got down here is that I called Richard Dawkins Dick Dawkins, and I thought about writing Scam Harris, but that felt too Trumpian, so I think we'll close it out there. Thank you, everyone who soldiered through this whole video. Inshallah, assalamu alaikum, God be with ye.
Is that the right one to say?
I might have to say salam alaikum or something. I don't know.
I think you said the right one.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Muslims out there. Don't make me scared of you like Alex O'Connor is. That's all I got.
Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.